The sun hovered just above the rugged peaks east of Sagebrush Junction, painting the town in molten gold. Saloon doors creaked in the breeze, their faded red paint worn thin by decades of sandstorms and hard living. Dust swirled down Main Street as townsfolk paused in their preparations, turning toward the whitewashed church at the square's heart. Inside, 19-year-old Rosalia Calloway smoothed the lace of her wedding gown for what felt like the 1000th time, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain the entire congregation could hear it. Rosalia's fingers trembled as they traced the delicate embroidery along the bodice, tiny wildflowers stitched by her own mother, who rested on a wooden bench behind her. The banker's front parlor had been transformed into a makeshift bridal suite, lanterns dangling from the ceiling beams and fresh sage bouquets tucked into every corner. Outside, the congregation gathered, the minister, Reverend Thurston, his once pristine collar now smeared with dust. Her father, Isaac Calloway, chest puffed with pride, though worry creased his brow. And the banker groom, Silas Ashcroft, standing tall in his polished boots, his tailored suit a stark contrast against the weathered wood of the church. Rosalia drew a measured breath, forcing her thudding heart to steady. She thought of the letter Silas had sent 3 weeks earlier, promising security for her family's struggling spread. Her mother's frail frame, her sister's bright future, all would be protected by his wealth. Yet as the day drew near, a small voice in Rosalia's mind whispered doubt. She glanced at her reflection in a tarnished mirror propped against a crate, those vivid, hopeful eyes now shadowed by fear. Was she marrying to save her family, or sacrificing her own dreams? A sudden commotion drifted from the street beyond. The parlor window. Rosalia paused, ears straining. Shouts one, then two, swelling into a frantic cry. Her mother stood, clutching her shawl. "What is it, Mama?" Rosalia whispered, dread coiling in her stomach. Before her mother could answer, the parlor door burst open. Dust billowed in on a trio of mounted riders. The tallest, dust-caked and broad-shouldered, dismounted with the grace of someone used to pulling a rifle from holster in the dark. His wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow across his face, but his eyes, steel blue and unyielding, were unmistakable to Rosalia's racing heart. "Daddy!" she gasped as her father rushed forward, confusion twisting his features. The rider's friend held the reins of a bay mare, hooves pawing the floorboards. The third, a younger man, stood guard by the doorway, hand hovering near his belt. Rosalia's breath caught as the rider removed his hat. Sunlight glinted off the brim, revealing a face etched with determination and miles of solitude. He was lean, weathered, the kind of man who measured danger and found it wanting. It was Jeremiah Calloway, her estranged cousin, the gentle ranch hand turned reluctant defender. Once she had known him as a boy who chased tumbleweeds and chased dreams. Now he embodied a silent resolve that filled the room as completely. As the dust, Father's hands trembled on Jeremiah's shoulders as he said, "Jeremiah, what are you doing here?" The wedding, Jeremiah's jaw tightened. He glanced past Rosalia to where Silas Ashcroft stood, crisp and unreadable. Jeremiah's eyes flicked to Rosalia, her wide, fearful gaze meeting his. In that instant, she felt everything, a lifetime of unspoken words, promises unmade, and a fierce hope ignited in her chest. Jeremiah took a deliberate step forward. "This wedding can't go on." His voice was low but carried every mile he had. "Ridden at dawn, not unless she truly wants it." Silas's polished demeanor cracked. He straightened, voice smooth as silk on air. "Miss Calloway, cousin, what is the meaning of—" Jeremiah met Silas's gaze without flinching. "Meaning is simple. Rosalia doesn't belong to your ledgers and mortgages. She belongs where she chooses to be." A hush fell. In the dust-laden parlor, Rosalia felt the eyes of every soul fix on her. Her heart thundered, each beat echoing a question. Could she find the strength to choose herself? Jeremir's presence stirred a resolve within her, a daring belief that she might be more than an heir to a bank's promise. Silas's lips curved in a condescending smile that failed to reach his cold gray eyes. "You ride in here, uninvited, and threaten a proper wedding. This is a business arrangement as much as a union of hearts." Rosalia drew a shaky breath, stepping between Silas and Jeremir. "It wasn't only business to me, but now I see it was everything but love. My life isn't yours to secure, Mr. Ashcroft. It's mine to choose." A murmur rippled from her family and the riders beyond. Her father's eyes glistened, pride battling humiliation, while her mother's hand found hers, strength flowing. Between them, Silas's gaze hardened. He reached for his vest. Jeremir shifted, one hand brushing the stock of his rifle, but his voice stayed calm. "I won't draw on you, Silas, not for Rosalia's sake. She's chosen her own path. If you leave her door, no harm will come to you. But if you stay—" Silas's hand paused over his pocket, tension crackling in the stale air. The younger rider outside cleared his throat, and Rosalia saw the mare stamping, uneasy. Time-stilled wedding. Bells and gunshots held in fragile balance. Rosalia felt her own pulse steady, then surge with newfound clarity. No longer the frightened girl pinned by duty, she raised her chin. "I choose freedom." Silas's jaw clenched. He glanced at her father, then back at Jeremir. The desert wind rattled the windows as if urging him to decide. At last Silas's shoulders slumped in defeat. Without a word, he turned and strode toward the door, spurs tapping a retreating rhythm. Silas paused at the threshold, hand on the latch. He looked back once, eyes narrowing, then slipped into the sunlight, mounting his horse and riding off down Main Street. Dust swirled behind him, carrying his rancor away. Silence reigned. Then Jeremir exhaled, removing his hat. He approached Rosalia, boots thudding on the wooden floor. He bowed his head, a gentleman's gesture that brought a shy smile to her lips. Her mother stepped forward, wrapping Rosalia in a gentle embrace. Isaac Calloway's proud tears fell as he clasped Jeremir's hand. Rosalia's gaze found the open window where sunlight and dust danced together. The future lay beyond that frame, bright, uncertain, and entirely her own. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The desert night fell like a velvet curtain across Sagebrush Junction, wrapping the town in shadows and silence. The air was cooler now, scented with mesquite smoke and the faint perfume of night-blooming yucca. The church had long since emptied, its pews creaking quietly under the weight of a day's drama. In the banker's parlor-turned-bridal room, the candles had burned low. Rosalia sat by the open window, no longer in her wedding gown, but in a simple homespun dress. The lace sleeves hung from a nearby chair, discarded like the life she had nearly stepped into. Moonlight danced on the floorboards, and her fingers played absently with the edge of a linen handkerchief, each stitch a remnant of her mother's care. Jeremir leaned against the far wall, arms folded, hat held at his chest. He had said little since Silas rode out, but his presence was a steady comfort. Like the cool hush of water in a desert canyon. She finally broke the silence. "I didn't think you'd come back." He looked up, his voice quiet. "Didn't think I was needed. Not till I heard from Eli. He saw Silas's men surveying your father's ranch line. Said they were planning more than just a wedding." Rosalia frowned. The ranch, but Silas said he'd save it. He promised to pay off the debt. Jeremir crossed the room and knelt beside her. In the dim candlelight, his face was drawn, a shadow of the boy she once knew. "Silas doesn't buy land to save it. He wanted your father's water rights. Had a lawyer draw up a hidden clause in the marriage contract. If you'd signed it during the ceremony, you'd be giving up the deed." Her breath caught. "You're sure?" He nodded. "Found the document myself. He tried the same thing in Rustwood. 2 families ruined before anyone figured it out. Rosalia stood, her voice sharp with sudden fury. He lied to us, played us. Jeremiah placed a calming hand on her arm. That's why I came. To stop him. But there's more you need to know. Outside, the desert stirred. An owl hooted in the distance, and the sound of hooves echoed faintly on the ridge. Jeremiah turned his head, eyes narrowing. What is it? She asked. Trouble. That's Elias's signal. A minute later, the young man who'd stood guard earlier slipped into the parlor, breathless, his face streaked with dust. Jeremiah, they're coming. 10 men riders camped near the South Wash. Silas ain't done. Jeremiah's voice hardened. He's regrouping. Reckon he means to force the sale by fear. Rosalia stood taller now, her fists clenched. Then we'll fight. Jeremiah's eyes searched hers. It won't be easy. He's got hired guns, former Pinkertons. And we've got land, rights, and truth. She turned toward the bedroom, retrieving a canvas map from her late brother's old trunk. Jeremiah followed her, watching her unfurl it across the table. She pointed. The aquifer lies under the eastern slope. He's after that. If we block access through the Gulch Trail, we cut his route off. Jeremiah stared at her. You remembered? Rosalia nodded. I helped Papa survey it. He taught me to read land the way some folk read scripture. Jeremiah smiled for the first time all evening. You've changed. She met his gaze with quiet strength. Maybe, or maybe I just stopped pretending to be what they needed me to be. Elias looked between them. I'll ride to old Sam's place. He's still got that scattergun and 2 mean dogs. Rosalia nodded. Tell him we need him by dawn, and tell the Bartletts too. They owe Papa. The young man vanished into the night, leaving Rosalia and Jeremiah alone again. The lantern flickered, casting shadows that danced across the map. There's one more thing, Jeremiah said, voice low. He pulled a folded parchment from his coat and handed it to her. Found this in Silas's ledger. It's not just our land. He's striking deals with a railroad syndicate. If he gets this valley, he'll push every family out within a year. Rosalia's face darkened. Then we stop him here, now. They didn't sleep that night. They drew plans, lit signal fires, and sent word through the dry gullies and over the moonlit hills. By dawn, 15 riders had gathered behind the barn ranchers. Blacksmiths, even a schoolteacher with a rusted revolver. Jeremiah mounted his Baymar and looked over at Rosalia, now dressed in her father's old trail coat and a rifle strapped to her back. Her face was smudged with ash and determination. Ready? He asked. She nodded, fire in her eyes. Let them come. We're not giving up 1 inch. As the morning sun crested the hills, the desert wind shifted. In the distance, a dust cloud rose. Silas Ashcroft was coming back, but this time Rosalia. Calloway was waiting with the truth, her people, and a loaded rifle in hand. Let us know in the comments if you'd ride with her. And make sure you're subscribed. The fight is only beginning. The sun bled orange across the vast New Mexico sky as the Calloway Ranch transformed into a fortress. The smell of gun oil mingled with the scent of damp earth as townsfolk, ranch hands, and weary neighbors set up barricades along the properties. Eastern Ridge. Rosalia stood atop a hay bale near the corral, addressing a semicircle of dust-covered defenders. We've got one chance to stop him before he pushes through. Willow Gulch. That trail's narrow and steep gives us the advantage. We hold the gulch, we hold the ranch. The wind pulled at the hem of her coat, but she stood steady. Around her, a dozen faces nodded. Old Sam adjusted his scattergun, grinning with the kind of mischief only a man of 70 and 2 false teeth could muster. My dogs don't like bankers, never did. They'll smell Silas from a mile out. Elias, already saddled and ready to ride back with another supply run, asked, What about the townsfolk? Sheriff Brogan? Jeremiah, beside Rosalia, replied with a grim shake of his head. Brogan took Ashcroft's gold 2 weeks ago. He won't. Lift a finger. We're on our own. The group tensed. Rosalia stepped forward. Then we fight like we've got something to lose. Because we do. This land, our homes, our families, it's not just about the ranch anymore. Silas is bringing more than men. He's bringing fear. She turned to the map tacked to the barn wall, marking each point of elevation and access. We split into 3 squads. Jeremiah takes the ridge. I'll lead the gulch. Sam and the Bartletts cover the rear fence line in case he tries to flank. They dispersed to their stations, and for a moment, Rosalia stood alone in the barn, her fingers trailing along. The map, it had once been her father's, now it was hers. Jeremiah stepped inside. He removed his hat and held it by the brim. You sure about this? Rosalia looked up, eyes fierce. I was almost married to a snake. That was worse. This is clarity. He nodded slowly. Then I'm with you, all the way. By nightfall, the sky churned with low clouds. A storm brewed somewhere past the mesas, thunder rolling in waves like distant cannon fire. Rosalia lay beneath the twisted limbs of a juniper tree above the gulch. Spyglass in hand. Just after midnight, the earth trembled with hooves. 10 riders came into view, cloaked in shadow, their lanterns shuddered. Ashcroft rode at the head, flanked by a man with a scar over one eye and another with a sawed-off, shotgun hanging casually across his lap. Rosalia lowered the glass and signaled with a flick of her wrist. Jeremiah's squad lit a match behind a screen, their signal code flashing against the canyon wall. The trap was set down in the gulch. A rusted mining cart had been tipped sideways. Rosalia crouched behind it, rifle nestled against her shoulder. Her heartbeat steady despite the weight of the moment. Silas's voice echoed across the trail. Calloway, you still think this land is yours? I've got a deed signed and ready. Walk away now and I'll let your people go. Rosalia stood. Her silhouette against the canyon wall drew gasps from the advancing riders. She shouted back, You tried to take it with a ring. Now you want it with a gun. I'm not marrying either. Silas chuckled darkly, So be it. He raised a hand, and the first wave surged forward, riders armed, dust billowing, hooves tearing across shale. Rosalia waited until they crossed the white marker stone halfway up the gulch. Then she fired. Her bullet struck the lead rider's lantern, shattering it into flames. The sudden light blinded those behind him. Jeremiah's team loosed a volley from the ridge, forcing the second wave to scatter. Old Sam's dogs howled from the rear. Launching into the flank. Elias tackled one of the Pinkertons off his horse, dragging him into the sagebrush. Rosalia leapt from behind the cart, firing as she moved. Each shot calculated, controlled. Each one reminded her of nights, spent with her father learning the wind's breath and the rifle's kick. Chaos swallowed the gulch. Silas shouted for order, but his men were breaking, some riding for cover, others surrendering outright. A sharp cry rang out. Jeremiah fell from the ridge, a grazing wound across his ribs. Rosalia ran to him, dragging him to safety behind a stone outcrop. He groaned. Got too bold, hit by buckshot. She pressed a cloth to his side. You're lucky it wasn't worse. You always did need a reminder not to play hero. He chuckled through the pain. Guess you're the hero now. Minutes passed before the last of Silas's men scattered into the night. Silas himself remained, pinned against a rock near the lower path, his revolver empty, his pride shattered. Rosalia approached him slowly, rifle slung over her shoulder. It's over, she said. You've lost. Silas sneered. You think this ends with you? My syndicate's bigger than one spoiled heiress with a gun. She knelt down beside him. Then tell them what happened here. Tell them we don't bend. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he spat into the dirt. She turned and walked away. At dawn, the defenders gathered by the ranch house. The battle was done, no one dead. A few injuries, mostly bruised pride. But they had held. Rosalia stood before them, bloodied and worn. We defended more than land. We defended each other. This isn't just the Calloway Ranch anymore. It's the people's land now. A cheer rose. Hands clasped. Old rivals shook hands. Old debts forgiven. Jeremiah, bandaged and pale, took her hand as the sun warmed the valley again. "You're not the girl I left behind," he whispered. Rosalia squeezed his fingers. "No, I'm the woman who's staying." And far off where the desert met the horizon, the storm passed quietly into memory. Let us know in the comments if you'd have stood at the gulch too. Make sure you're subscribed. Next time, a stranger arrives from the railroad company, and he's carrying more than just papers. 3 days after the fight at Willow Gulch, the land breathed easier. Dust no longer choked the valley winds, and the cattle once again wandered freely across the high pastures. Rosalia Calloway stood in the orchard beside the house, hammering. A new signpost into the hard earth. Calloway Cooperative, by hand, by heart, by land. Beside her, Jeremiah, still stiff from the buckshot wound, leaned on a fence post and watched with a small smile. "You name it that yourself?" Rosalia drove the last nail in and wiped her brow. "We did this together. Every family that stood with. U.S. owns a share now. It's not just a ranch, it's a promise." He nodded slowly. "Your father would have been proud." Her throat tightened at the thought of Isaac Calloway. Gone 2 winters now, lost to pneumonia and debt, but never defeated. His vision lived on in her hands, her voice, her leadership. Before she could respond, the rumble of wheels broke the morning stillness. A wagon approached the ranch gate, but it wasn't local. It was polished, black-lacquered wood, drawn by 2 glossy bays and driven by a man in a wide tan hat and fine leather gloves. On the side was a golden emblem, Union Continental Rail Syndicate. Rosalia's blood chilled. Jeremiah stepped forward as the wagon slowed. The driver, a clean-shaven man in his early 40s, tipped his hat politely. "Good morning, Miss Calloway, I presume?" Rosalia folded her arms. "You're with the syndicate," he nodded. "Caleb Trenholm, Legal Acquisitions Officer for Union Continental." "I come on peaceful terms," Jeremiah scoffed. "That's what the last snake said before we ran him out with a busted pistol." Trenholm chuckled lightly. "Yes, Mr. Ashcroft's incident was unfortunate, but I assure you, my visit is of a different nature." Rosalia didn't budge. "What is it you want, Mr. Trenholm?" He reached behind him, pulling a leather briefcase from the seat, and carefully handed her a parchment. "You've made quite a name for yourself, Miss Calloway. The company expected easy acquisition of these lands. Your recent resistance. Complicated. That, but now you have their attention." Rosalia unrolled the document lined with clauses, stamps, and the signature of a commissioner in Santa Fe. Trenholm continued. "Union Continental would like to propose a partnership. They're rerouting the line 2 miles north, and with your permission, they'll build a station here, passenger and freight. In exchange, the syndicate offers a majority cut of toll rights to your cooperative." Jeremiah blinked. "You're offering a station?" Trenholm nodded. "Yes, not out of charity. You've become a symbol. Resistance makes for fine headlines, but cooperation earns long-term profits." Rosalia's heart raced. A station here would mean trade, tourists, supply lines, access to doctors, books, education for the children. It would change everything. She met Trenholm's gaze. "And if I say no?" He shrugged with professional indifference. "Then we take the line south, through Mesa Hollow. You'll lose the trade opportunity, but keep your land. For now, but the world doesn't wait, Miss Calloway." He tipped his hat once more. "Think it over. I'll be staying at the inn in Sagebrush for 2 days." With that, he turned his wagon and rode off, dust curling behind him like a serpent. Jeremiah exhaled. You believe him? Rosalia shook her head. I believe he's a shark who learned to smile. But that offer could change lives, Jeremiah finished. They spent the afternoon in discussion with the cooperative's members. Some were cautious. Old Sam refused to trust any man in polished boots, but others saw the station as hope. By sundown, the town was divided. That night, Rosalia walked alone to the overlook at the North Ridge. The moon cast silver light on the scrubland, and far in the distance, a freight train howled. She heard soft steps behind her. Jeremiah, you ever think about leaving? She asked. He sat beside her. Every day. And every day I decide I'm right. Where I belong, she smiled faintly. If we agree to this station, we change everything. It's progress, but it's also risk. What if they come back in 5 years with new terms, new pressure? He placed a hand on hers. Then we'll do what we did before. Stand our ground, together. The silence between them grew tender. Rosalia turned her face to him, the moonlight framing her cheekbones. You know, she whispered, I used to think love was something handed to you, but I think now it's something you fight for. Build brick by brick. Jeremiah's lips brushed her knuckles. Then let's build. Whatever you choose, I'm here. 2 days later, Rosalia rode alone into Sagebrush Junction. She found Trenholm at the hotel veranda, sipping coffee from a porcelain cup. You have your answer? He asked, rising. She handed him a document of her own. Here's our counteroffer. The cooperative retains 70% rights. We decide. Placement. And the line is surveyed by our engineers, not yours. Trenholm scanned the page, then looked up, genuinely impressed. You drive a hard bargain. I learned from the best liars in your business. I know what to look for now, he chuckled. We'll review, but I suspect the board will accept. As Rosalia turned to leave, he called out, You know, the syndicate rarely negotiates with locals. You've done something special. She paused, then smiled. I'm not a local, I'm the land. And she rode home, where the fields waited, and the people gathered to hear what the future might hold. Let us know below. Would you have signed the offer, or stood firm? And don't forget to subscribe next time a wounded outlaw rides into the valley, with Rosalia's name written in his blood-soaked journal. It was near dusk when the outlaw rode in from the east, his horse half limping, foam streaking down its flanks, and the man atop it clinging to the saddle horn like a broken banner caught in the wind. At first, no one saw him. The fields were quiet, the livestock penned, and most of the townsfolk gathered at the new barn, where Rosalia was unveiling the blueprints for the upcoming rail station. Only young Ellie Maynard, sweeping the porch of her father's general store, noticed the figure sway across the horizon. She shaded her eyes. Mama? There's someone riding funny down by the orchard. Minutes later, Rosalia was kneeling in the dust, her hands covered in the outlaw's blood. The stranger's shirt was torn and stained, his coat riddled with bullet holes, and his breath came in ragged, gasping intervals. He looked barely older than 25, with high cheekbones and a mess of auburn hair. Easy now, Rosalia murmured. You're safe. The man's eyes fluttered. He tried to speak. Jeremiah knelt beside her, inspecting the injuries. 3 bullet wounds, 2 through the side, 1 grazed the leg. He won't last the hour if we don't get the bleeding stopped. They carried him to the old bunkhouse. As Rosalia and the Bartlett sisters boiled water and stitched flesh, Jeremiah found something clutched in the man's coat, a small leather journal, soaked nearly through with blood. Carefully he opened it. Inside, page after page was scrawled. In uneven script maps, names, accusations. And in the middle of the last page, a note written in bold strokes. Find our Calloway. Only she can stop them. Jeremiah's stomach sank. He brought the journal to Rosalia that night. She sat beside the stranger, who now slept, fevered and twitching, his body fighting for every breath. He came looking for you, Jeremiah said, handing over the pages. Rosalia flipped through, her eyes narrowing. The maps were of the surrounding counties, with red X's marked on land plots, some near the new rail route, others on remote ranches. The names beside the marks were familiar. That's the Brodies. They vanished 2 months ago. And the Lagrants weren't. They foreclosed by Ashcroft's firm last spring. Jeremiah nodded grimly. These marks, it's a pattern. Rosalia looked closer. A name was repeated on 4 different pages. Trenholm. Her mouth went dry. He was here just days ago, she whispered. He offered us a deal. Said he was with Union Continental. Jeremiah took the journal and pointed to a scrawled paragraph. Syndicate's front men arrive before construction. They create tension, displace locals, then arrange accidents, fire, flood, foreclosure. It's never random. And it always starts with a handshake. Rosalia's fingers curled around the edge of her chair. This wasn't a deal. It was the first move in a takeover. Just then, the stranger stirred. His voice was barely audible. Stop them. Can't let happen again. Rosalia leaned in. Who are you? He blinked slowly. Call me Finch, used to. Run rail security. I saw what they did in Dry Creek. Town gone. Burned. Syndicate blamed lightning. It wasn't. They sent men. Killed the mayor. Paid the sheriff. All so they could build without resistance. Rosalia's heart pounded. And Trenholm? Finch coughed blood. He's not just a negotiator. He runs the cleanups. If a town says no, he makes it disappear. That night, the ranch held council. The same faces who had once fought Silas gathered again, some armed, some frightened, all galvanized. We thought the threat passed, Rosalia said. But we were wrong. The syndicate hasn't stopped. They've just changed tactics. And if what Finch says is true, this valley could be gone in a year. Sam stood. So what do we do? If they're planning a cleanup, do we wait for it? Jeremiah shook his head. No, we strike first. Rosalia held up the journal. This is proof, but not enough. We need a witness. And we need the railroad board in Santa Fe to see it. If they don't act, the press will. They devised a plan, Jeremiah. And Finch, if he recovered, would ride south undercover, carrying the journal and affidavits to the territorial capital. Rosalia and the cooperative would feign agreement to Trenholm's terms to keep suspicion low. While gathering further proof. As dawn broke, Finch, pale and trembling, sipped broth while Rosalia packed a satchel of letters. You don't have to go, she said softly. You've done enough. He met her gaze. If I don't see it through, I'll never sleep again. Jeremiah saddled up. Rosalia walked with him to the edge of the yard. This is twice now you've ridden into danger because of me, she said. No, he replied, because of what's right. They rode out before sunrise. Back at the ranch, Rosalia donned her father's long coat once more. She turned to the gathered townsfolk. We play nice. We smile. We keep their eyes off the real plan. But when the time comes, we expose them, every name, every lie. We bury this syndicate under the truth. And far off, across the dusty horizon, Trenholm sat in a rented office, drafting a new proposal, one that involved dynamite, a hired arsonist, and a contingency plan labeled Calloway. Tell us in the comments, would you have trusted the stranger? Stay tuned next time. A secret telegram brings everything crashing down. The morning was quiet. Too quiet, the kind of silence Rosalia had come to dread. No birdsong, no distant cattle cries. Even the wind held its breath as if it, too, knew that something was wrong. She stood on the bunkhouse porch with a mug of bitter chicory coffee, eyes scanning the open range. The steam from the cup coiled upward like smoke from a signal fire. Behind her, the rest of the ranch stirred slowly. Children helped gather eggs. Mrs. Bartlett was already kneading bread in the outdoor kitchen. And old Sam's dogs chased a jackrabbit down the south fence line. But Rosalia's senses prickled. Something was off. The hunch proved right when Ellie Maynard came running up the dirt path from town, her face white as bone and her bonnet slipping off one shoulder. "Miss Calloway, a telegram from Santa Fe." Rosalia's blood chilled. She hurried to meet Ellie halfway. The girl handed over a crumpled yellow envelope, its edges singed as if it had passed too close to fire. The message was simple. Jeremiah, wounded. Finch missing. Documents seized. Stop. Board sympathies unreliable. Stop. Do not trust Trenholm. Stop. They know. Stop. Signed. L. Cassidy, telegraph operator. Santa Fe Junction. Rosalia's knees almost gave. Jeremiah wounded. Finch missing. The journal and affidavits gone. Her hands trembled as she folded the telegram back into its envelope. She pressed it to her chest, drawing in a deep, shaky breath. Not here, not now. She had to stay upright. Ellie stood fidgeting. "Should I fetch the others?" Rosalia shook her head. "No, not yet. Go home. Pretend nothing's changed." When the girl was gone, Rosalia walked to the barn, shut the doors, and dropped to her knees beside a bale of hay. The walls closed in around her. A sob tried to claw its way out, but she buried it. There was no time for grief, not yet. She'd learned that from her mother. Instead, she pulled the maps from the hidden drawer in the barn loft. The copies of Finch's notes were there, wrapped in oilcloth. Thank God they'd had the sense to make duplicates. Footsteps approached. It was Samuel Bartlett, face weathered, hands scarred from years of hammering iron. "You felt it too, huh?" She didn't look up. "We've got a problem." Jeremiah didn't make it to the board. The journal's gone. "They know what we're doing." Sam whistled through his teeth. "Then it's a matter of time." "Exactly." He crouched beside her. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Rosalia met his eyes. "We leaked the story anyway. Not to the board, not to officials, to the people. To every ranch, every telegraph pole, every drifter who'll carry a word over whiskey. We make it too loud to silence." Sam's grin returned. "I'll get the ink ready." For the next 2 days, the Calloway Cooperative became a makeshift press room. Under Rosalia's direction, they rewrote Finch's entries, read through the maps, and listed every family affected by the syndicate's land grabs. Every crooked sheriff, every suspicious fire, every buried clause, and every so-called deed. They printed it all, and they didn't just send it to Santa Fe. They sent it to every town. Between here and El Paso, to preachers and saloon keepers, to school teachers and undertakers. They even bribed the traveling medicine man to take copies east in exchange for shelter and beef jerky. The headlines they printed read, "Syndicate fraud uncovered by Calloway Ranch. Blood, land, and lies. The story they tried to bury. Outlaw turned. Whistleblower missing after testimony." And across the region, whispers became voices. Voices became questions. And questions became flames. But with the fire came retribution. One night, just past midnight, a fire broke out in the east pasture. The hay barn went up in minutes, an inferno so bright it could be seen from town. 3 cattle were lost, a section of the fence destroyed. No one saw who did it. The next day, a note was left nailed to the front gate. "You were warned. Rosalia." Read it without flinching. Then she passed it to Sam and picked up her rifle. "If they want war, they'll find we're not the ones who started it." Later that evening, the ranch radio crackled. A new message had come through the telegraph station in Canyon Bluff. Smuggled through 3 towns. Finch spotted near Silver Rock. Escaped. Bad shape. Hiding in mining tunnel. Stop. Need help. Stop. Rosalia didn't hesitate. She saddled her horse, strapped a rifle to her back, and gathered a small team. Elis, Sam, and young Clara Bartlett. "They tried to kill him to erase the truth," she said. "We'll ride through the night. We get Finch out." "And we bring him back to testify?" Clara asked. even if they try to kill him again. Rosalia's eyes burned with fire. Especially if they do. As the moon rose, they rode south, four shadows against the vast New Mexico wilderness. Tell us in the comments, would you have ridden into that night? Make sure you're subscribed. The next part reveals what Finch found in that tunnel and who followed him in. The silver rock tunnels lay like scars across the desert floor, half-collapsed remnants of an abandoned mining boom 2 decades past. Rusted tracks disappeared into black mouths bored deep into the limestone. Coyotes kept their distance, as if something unspoken haunted the caves. Rosalia and her team reached the edge of the mining site just before dawn. Pale violet light crept across the sky, revealing shattered minecarts, broken shovels, and the collapsed remnants of a pulley tower. Elias dismounted first, his eyes sharp. Tracks. Boot prints. Someone's been through here. Not syndicate men soles are uneven. One of M's dragging their right foot. Finch, Rosalia said. Sam knelt beside a small cairn of rocks near the cave entrance. This is fresh. Message cache. He pulled away the top stone and uncovered a folded note sealed in wax. Rosalia broke it open. They found me. Lost than 2 ridges. Back. Hiding in shaft 3B, North Fork. Low oxygen. Don't bring more than 4. They'll be watching. Finch. Rosalia turned to Clara and Elias. Tie off the horses and set camp behind that boulder ridge. If anything happens, if you hear shots, you ride for town. Don't wait. Clara's jaw trembled. And you? We get him out. Or we don't come back. Rosalia and Sam descended into shaft 3B with lanterns lowered to half-light. The air grew cold and thick with coal dust. Sounds echoed strangely in the narrow corridors, dripping water, shifting stone, and the creak of old wooden supports. Every step deeper was a step into the mouth of the past. 50 feet in, they found the first sign of a struggle, a bloodied scarf wrapped around a broken pickaxe. Nearby, a smashed lantern still stank of kerosene. They were here, Sam muttered, and they wanted him dead. The tunnel split into 2 forks. Rosalia hesitated. A soft tapping echoed from the right. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Pause. 1. That's Morse, Sam said, eyes wide. That's him. They followed the sound, ducking beneath low beams and crawling past a section where the tunnel had collapsed. On the far side, they found a crude barricade of crates and stone. Behind it, Finch sat propped against the wall, pale and shaking, with a pistol gripped in both hands. He nearly fired before Rosalia called his name. It's me, Rosalia. Sam's. With me. Finch lowered the weapon. God, you came. They hauled him out. One leg was bound in a splint made of timber and twine. His shirt was torn again, this time stained with fresh bruises. They followed me halfway through the pass. I circled back, doubled blind trails. Thought I shook them. Sam checked behind them. We need to move, fast. But it was already too late. Gunfire erupted at the tunnel mouth. A bullet cracked off the stone beside Sam's head. Go! Rosalia shouted, dragging Finch into motion. The next minutes blurred, a frantic sprint through darkness, gunshots chasing them through echoing shafts. Twice they ducked falling beams as their pursuers used dynamite to collapse sections behind them. They made it to the surface just as Elias loosed a warning shot from behind a boulder. Clara had taken up position on the ridge with a scoped rifle. She dropped one of the syndicate men before he could breach the entrance. Sam pulled Rosalia and Finch behind the stone barricade. We've got 5 or 6 shooters in the canyon. At least 2 with repeaters. We can't outrun them with Finch's leg, Rosalia said. She looked around. But we don't have to. We trapped them. They lured their pursuers into the mine. Sam and Elias doubled back, lighting charges in Shaft 2, the oldest, most unstable tunnel. They taunted the men, then vanished into the dust. When the last syndicate rider entered the shaft, Elias lit the fuse. The explosion rocked the earth. Shaft 2 caved in with a roar, burying their enemies in a cloud of ash and stone. They didn't stop to watch. By nightfall, they were back at the Calloway Ranch. Finch, fevered and barely conscious, was laid in the bunkhouse. Rosalia handed the recovered pages from his pack to Clara. "Get these copied again. We'll send them out tomorrow." Sam leaned in the doorframe, exhausted but alive. "They're gonna come harder now." Rosalia nodded. "Then we stand harder." That night, the ranch turned its lanterns low. They buried the day's noise beneath soft hymns and the clatter of typewriter keys. But in the hills beyond, a lone horseman watched through binoculars. Trenholm. He lowered the glass, scowling. Beside him, a scarred man with a crooked jaw spoke. "They've got the whistleblower. That'll be a problem." Trenholm lit a cigar, staring into the dark. "Then we make it disappear." Again, let us know in the comments. Would you have followed the echoing taps? Subscribe next time. The Ranch faces a betrayal from within. A week passed. Finch slowly healed, his fever breaking under Clara's careful nursing and Sam's homemade poultices. The pages he carried documents implicating the syndicate's manipulation of land records, testimonies of forced evictions. Even a photograph of a burned town hall were copied, catalogued, and sent far and wide. Letters came back. A liar in El Paso offered to build a case. A traveling journalist requested interviews. A preacher from Tucson sent $10 and a promise of 20 more if they could stop the devil's fingers from sinking deeper into the West. Rosalia should have felt triumphant, but something gnawed at her, a feeling. A flicker, like someone watching her from the wrong shadow. She began noticing things. A nail left loose on the tool shed gate. A fence section unlatched near the cattle run. A shipment of letters never making it to the next town. Jeremiah would have noticed it too, she thought bitterly. She hadn't heard from him since the telegram. No one had. Then one night Clara found a scrap of paper tucked beneath the ledger in the barn. A coded note. Simple, hurried. "He knows. J was intercepted. C has been bought." Rosalia stared at it under lantern light. J was intercepted. C has been bought. Finch and Sam stood beside her. C? Sam whispered. C could mean Clara, could mean Cassidy the telegraph operator. Rosalia paced. Could mean Caleb Trenholm. But has been bought implies betrayal, not mastermind. Finch leaned over. What? If it's someone inside? Someone who turned? The words made Rosalia sick. Everyone in the cooperative had fought, sacrificed. She couldn't imagine betrayal from within. But the next morning, the water tower was found sabotaged, the overflow. Pipe had been stuffed with rags and grease. If Sam hadn't checked it before sunrise, the whole irrigation line would have backed up and burst. Rosalia convened the core council in the barn. Sam, Clara, Finch, Elias, Mrs. Bartlett, and old Father Maynard. She showed them the note. Told them about the tower. No one spoke for a long time. Then Finch said quietly, "There's one way to know." He walked to the back of the barn and opened the ledger drawer where they kept a fake set of Finch's documents, a decoy. He pulled out the envelope, opened it. Empty. Someone took the decoy papers. Thought they were real. Rosalia's voice hardened. Which means they've tried to smuggle them out. Sam grunted. Only 6 people knew about this drawer. And 4 of us are standing right here. Rosalia looked to Clara. Her face was pale. "Clara," she said gently, "where were you last night between sundown and when you brought supper to Finch?" Clara's eyes welled with tears. "I was at the windmill, I swear. I thought I saw movement and I went to check. I didn't." "I would never." Finch studied her, then slowly stepped away. "It's not her." Rosalia frowned. "How can you be sure?" "Because I saw her in the window while I was pretending to sleep. She was carrying stew, not papers." Sam crossed his arms. Then that leaves two suspects. Mrs. Bartlett and Father Maynard. Rosalia felt like her lungs were caving in. The town's most trusted matron. The town's preacher. Mrs. Bartlett's voice trembled. Rosalia, I've known you since you were a child. I held your hand when your mother died. You think I'd do this? Maynard, calm and cold, simply folded his arms. Perhaps we should all take a moment to pray for discernment. Finch stepped between them. I have another idea. He walked to the saddlebag beside his cot and pulled out a small tin box. Inside was a packet of powder fine and pale coal dust. He explained, refined. Harmless unless you mix it with vinegar. But it clings to hands for hours. I dusted the decoy envelope. Anyone who handled it will still have traces. Rosalia's voice caught. And vinegar? Finch nodded. Makes it glow green. Sam brought out the bottle from the saloon stock, one by one. They washed their hands. Clara-nothing, Sam-nothing, Finch-nothing, Mrs. Bartlett nothing. Then, Father Maynard. His hands flared green. Everyone froze. You, Rosalia whispered. You who baptized me in that river. Maynard's eyes darkened. You've led this town into rebellion. I warned you. Trenholm's order was God's order. He brings rail. He brings money. You spit in the face of Providence. You sold us out, Sam growled. I guided you toward survival, Maynard hissed. But you all chose martyrdom. Rosalia's face hardened. Take him. They locked Maynard in the storm cellar. That night, the town gathered. Rosalia told them everything. Some cried, some cursed. But none doubted. We've been infiltrated before, she told them. We survived. We will again. And now we know what betrayal smells like. We'll never miss it again. As the people dispersed, Sam approached Rosalia on the porch. If Maynard's betrayal was discovered, Trenholm's going to act, soon. Rosalia looked out into the moonlight, then let him come. We're done playing defense. Let us know. Would you have caught the traitor? Subscribe because next time, the Syndicate unleashes its most ruthless weapon yet, the Black Ledger Squad. It began with silence. No horses. No birds. No wind. Just stillness, broken only by the rhythmic clink of Rosalia's spurs as she walked the perimeter at dawn. She paused on the ridge overlooking the valley where a thin haze curled across the ground too smooth to be missed. Smoke. A messenger arrived by midday. A ranch east of Canyon Bluff had been burned to the foundations. No survivors. A journal left at the gate, bound in black leather. Inside, a single name scrawled in blood-red ink. Calloway. That afternoon, Sam found the first sign of intrusion on their land. Strange bootprints near the south pasture. Deep, narrow tread. Military. Issue. Finch paled. They've sent them. Who? Rosalia asked. Finch stared toward the mountains. The Black Ledger Squad. They're not soldiers, not even Syndicate men, strictly. They're off-books operatives. Cleaners. They don't fight battles. They erase problems. You don't beat them in a firefight. You beat them by staying invisible. Rosalia clenched her jaw. That's not an option, not anymore. She called a council. The cooperative gathered in the long barn, faces drawn and hard. Clara, Elias, Mrs. Bartlett, each had seen too much to flinch anymore. Rosalia spoke with the conviction of a storm. They burned a ranch, left a name, mine. That wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. We're next. Elias crossed his arms. What do? We bait them, trap them, Sam grinned. Now you're speaking my language. They divided tasks. Finch would set false courier lines. Clara prepared decoy documents. Elias, Sam, and Rosalia built a kill box. The next morning, they faked a panic. Ryder galloped into sagebrush, yelling that Rosalia had left for Santa Fe with the original documents. Finch rode in behind him, whispering to the barkeep in earshot of Syndicate eyes. By sundown, 3 black-coated figures slipped into the Calloway orchard. No one greeted them. No lights. No dogs barking. They moved with precision. Two checked. The barn, one moved toward the bunkhouse. They carried silenced rifles, short-blade sabers, and wore visors of smoked glass. The one in the orchard bent to examine hoofprints. A click echoed. And then fire. A hidden fuse ignited a trench of kerosene. The flames flared, boxing them into a narrow channel between the corral and barn. From the trees above, Clara dropped the net. Barbed wire weaved into hemp crushed down over two of them. The third rolled free, raising his rifle, only to catch Finch's slug in the shoulder. No names. Rosalia shouted as she lunged forward, tackling the injured cleaner. They wrestled in the dirt. He was stronger, trained, but she was faster, meaner, and had something to fight for. A knee to his jaw bought her enough time to snatch the blade from his belt and drive it into the ground beside his head. He stilled. The two others fought viciously in the net. Sam and Elias rushed them, clubbing them unconscious. When it was done, they locked the three men in the old dry well, chaining the cover shut. Finch panted. "They'll send more." Rosalia wiped blood from her lip. "Then we send a message." She dragged one of the sabers from the ground, walked to the barn, and carved a word into the main gate in huge block letters. "We do not run." That night they broadcast the story again through letters, telegraphs, even carvings on canyon stones. The tale of the Black Ledger Squad's defeat spread faster than fire. 2 days later, a Union Continental executive arrived in Sagebrush by rail. Not Trenholm, a replacement. A woman named Agatha Lynn, pale and sharp as frost. She met Rosalia in the town hall. "Miss Calloway, I come to end this." Rosalia crossed her arms. "Is that so?" Lynn laid down 2 documents. One is a ceasefire proposal, full syndicate withdrawal, investigation pending. The other is a declaration of expansion, with you labeled a terrorist. The choice is yours. Rosalia stared at the papers. "You burned farms, tried to kill children, sent mercenaries." Lynn didn't blink. "We built the West. We burn what resists." Rosalia's voice became ice. "Then you'll have to burn every inch. Because we're not folding, not signing, not running." She took the expansion order, tore it in half, and handed it back. "Frame that." Lynn rose. "You've declared war." "No," Rosalia said. "You did. We're just answering." Lynn departed. The next day, the syndicate train derailed outside Mesa Hollow, 'cause sabotage. Culprit unknown. Momentum shifted. Across counties, ranchers rose. Sheriffs defected. Journalists published exposes. The name Calloway became not just a person, but a movement. Still, Rosalia knew it wasn't over. Lynn was just the next piece. And behind her, darker powers watched. Let us know. Would you have signed the ceasefire? Subscribe, because next time, Rosalia faces the ghosts of her past. And one has Jeremir's voice. It rained the next morning, light and steady, the kind of drizzle that soaked through your hat and coat and made the world feel quieter than it was. A day for memories, Rosalia thought. Or ghosts. She stood in the doorway of the bunkhouse watching. The gray sky spit over the valley, her coffee untouched. Clara approached, cautious. "You got a telegram." "From Santa Fe." But it wasn't sent by a telegraph office. Came from a courier. Rosalia took the envelope. Her name was written in the familiar hard strokes of a man who wrote only when he had to. Jeremir. She opened it with a trembling hand. Alive. Held 2 weeks by syndicate. Escaped. Injured but mobile. Meet me at Stone Widow Ridge. Midnight. Come. Alone. Burn this after. Her knees nearly gave. Jeremir. Alive. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she turned to Clara and said only, "Tell no one. I'll be back by morning." She rode out just before dusk, her rifle across her back, a knife in her boot, and a storm in her chest. The ridge was a day's ride northeast, barren, stony, shaped like a widow kneeling over a grave. They'd once picnicked there, she and Jeremiah, before the fighting began. By the time she arrived, the moon was cresting high, brushing silver. Over the rocks, wind whistled through the crags. He was there, waiting, slouched beside a dead fire pit, his coat draped over his shoulders like a shroud. His hair was longer, his face thinner, but his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, hadn't changed. "You look like hell," she said. Jeremiah stood slowly, wincing. "Good to see you too." They stared for a long moment. Then she rushed him, arms around his ribs. He grunted in pain, but held her tight. "How?" she asked. "Captured before I reached thee." "Bored. Someone tipped them off. They broke my leg, left me in a cellar in Sandstone Gorge. I played dead when they dumped the place. Crawled out." Rosalia's eyes burned. "We thought you were gone." "Almost was, more than once, but I had your voice in my head. It kept me moving." They sat by the old fire pit. Jeremiah pulled a leather roll from his pack. "Before I was taken, I met a man, former syndicate bookkeeper. Said he was tired of the blood. Gave me these." He unrolled the bundle. Inside were 10 pages, black-inked, stamped with the syndicate seal. Contracts, ledgers, names. One line stood out. Phase 3, eliminate. Resistance nodes, start with Callaway. Transition to Ranch 4B, Mesquite Hollow, and Ranch 5C, Dry Creek South. Rosalia felt bile rise. "They planned it. Even before you left." Jeremiah nodded. "And there's more. The Black Ledger Squad, they're just part of it. There's a deeper wing. Internal Asset Network. They call it the Coil. Uses infiltrators, sleepers. Not like Maynard. These are longer game, years in place." Rosalia whispered, "How many?" "Dozens, maybe hundreds." They were quiet for a long time. Then Jeremiah said, "We can't go back yet. We need to verify these documents, gather names." Rosalia stood. "Then we do it together. But I need to tell them something. They need hope. They need to know you're alive." He hesitated. "Maybe just you. Say it quiet. Otherwise the Coil will hear." She nodded. They embraced once more. Then Rosalia rode west. Jeremiah disappeared into the canyons. By dawn, she returned to the ranch. Clara rushed to her. "You okay?" Rosalia smiled faintly. "Saw a ghost. Turned out he was real." They worked all morning cataloging the new documents. Finch confirmed the handwriting as genuine. At sundown, Rosalia addressed the cooperative. "The syndicate hasn't stopped. We've just slowed them. But now we know more. And knowledge is fire. They can't put it out once it spreads. We won't tell you how to fight, but we'll tell you what we're fighting." She raised the ledgers. "This is how we win." The crowd roared, but in the shadows behind the barn, a figure watched. A ranch hand, young, quiet, too quiet. That night, he sent a rider with a black sealed envelope. Inside, 3 words. "Jeremiah is back. Let us know. Would you have gone to meet him alone?" Subscribe, because next time, a syndicate general steps out of the shadows and brings war to Callaway's gates. The dust rose long before the thunder of hooves. Rosalia stood on the front porch of the bunkhouse, eyes narrowed toward the horizon. In the distance, a line of riders emerged, black-cloaked figures in tight formation, moving with grim intent. At the front rode a man draped in gray leather, the gold trim on his coat glinting like a blade. His horse was pale, almost ghostly, and his hat sat low to hide his face. Finch whispered, "That's General Ardenvoss." Rosalia didn't flinch. "Who?" "Ex-Confederate cavalry. Turned syndicate when the money dried up. He trains mercenaries. Breaks towns like Kindling. Sam joined them, shotgun in hand. Looks like he's come to break us." Behind them, the ranch came alive. Children were moved to the root cellar. Women loaded rifles. Clara stood at the gate, adjusting the sights on her long-range scope. The riders halted just outside rifle range. General Voss dismounted. He walked forward. Alone. Rosalia met him halfway. Up close. He smelled of tobacco, saddle leather, and gunpowder. His eyes were the color of worn brass. "Miss Calloway," he said, voice low and courtly, "my condolences. You've made yourself quite the enemy." Rosalia crossed her arms. "And you've made yourself predictable." Voss grinned. "My orders are simple. Disband the cooperative, surrender the documents, and accompany me to Santa Fe for trial. And if I decline?" His smile didn't fade. "Then I burn this land until the vultures forget your name." Rosalia leaned in. "There's just one problem with your plan." He arched a brow. She whispered, "We're not afraid of fire anymore." She turned her back on him and walked away. Voss returned to his men, lifted a hand, and the first cannon round fired. It struck the east pasture, scattering cattle. The second hit the orchard. Trees burst into flame. The ranch erupted in motion. Clara opened fire from the windmill. Her bullet ripped through the neck of a syndicate scout. Elias and Sam led flanking charges, using terrain and smoke to outmaneuver. Rosalia mounted the lookout tower, rifle in hand. She spotted Voss directing movements from a ridge. She aimed. Fired. Missed. Barely. He ducked behind a stone. A syndicate sharpshooter returned fire. Rosalia dropped, the round grazing her shoulder. "Two." "Close," Clara muttered, dragging her down. For hours the battle surged. Fire lit the valley. Smoke choked the sky. But the cooperative held. Trap tunnels exploded under syndicate boots. Rigged fences shocked horses. Ranchers from neighboring towns arrived by dusk, drawn by the flames and fury. Voss pulled back at sundown. He stood atop a bluff, looking down at the battered but standing ranch. Then he raised a black flag, the mark of no quarter. The next attack would be final. Rosalia gathered the remaining fighters in the barn. "We held," she said. "But he's coming again, harder. We can't win with bullets alone. We need something bigger." Finch limped forward. "There's a syndicate supply train scheduled through Raven Gorge tomorrow night. Ammunition, fuel, more. Mercs. If we derail it," Rosalia nodded, "then we buy ourselves time. And maybe we end it." Sam slammed his fist into his palm. "Let's rob a damn train." The room lit up with grim, desperate laughter. Plans were drawn. By midnight, a team rode out. Rosalia, Finch, Clara, and Elias. They moved under moonlight, following the canyon road. North. Back at the ranch, Sam stayed behind to lead the defense. Before she left, Rosalia handed him a letter. "If we don't come back, read this at the next dawn." He didn't ask what it said. He just nodded. By morning, the team reached Raven Gorge. They set charges along the rails. Clara took the high ridge, spotting scope in hand. Finch prepped the fuse. Rosalia and Elias waited in ambush, and then the whistle. The syndicate train barreled through the canyon, smoke billowing. Finch shouted, "Now!" The explosion split the sky. Rails twisted. Cars toppled. From the wreckage crawled mercenaries, injured, scattered. Rosalia's team struck fast. Clara dropped two before they reached cover. Elias cut down the third. Finch lobbed firebombs into the remaining cars. Rosalia found the command car. Inside, crates of documents, ledgers, orders. She grabbed everything she could. By dusk, they rode home with black smoke behind them and proof in their saddlebags. At the ranch, Sam met them with blood on his sleeve and a smile. "Thought you were ghosts." Rosalia dismounted. "Not yet. But we brought the truth." She raised the papers. "This is how we finish it. We bring the war to the syndicate's doorstep. One truth at a time. Let us know. Would you have taken that train?" Subscribe, because next time, the general tries one final strategy. Assassinate Rosalia Calloway. The bullet missed Rosalia's heart by an inch. She felt the sting before she heard the crack. Then she was falling backward off the porch, gasping. Blood bloomed beneath her collarbone. Screams rang out. Clara tackled her behind the water trough, hands pressing hard to stop the bleeding. Sam returned fire toward the tree line. Finch shouted orders. Elias scrambled to get the horses in cover. Rosalia gritted her teeth. Sniper, East Ridge. One shot, no warning. Clara's hands were slick. They tried to kill you. No, Rosalia rasped. They are trying. She passed out. She woke to the smell of alcohol and the low murmur of Clara's voice. The ceiling above was unfamiliar. It was the doctor's cabin. Near the outer fields. Sam sat beside her. We got the shooter. Lone rider. Didn't make it out. No insignia, no ID. But the saddle had Voss's seal burned under the stirrup. Rosalia tried to sit. Pain knifed through her chest. He's sending assassins now, she said. He knows we've rattled the cage. Sam leaned in. What do you want? To do? She exhaled. End it. That night, the ranch moved like a beehive struck with a stick. People ran messages, trained aim, repaired barricades. They didn't wait for Voss to come again. They prepared to drag him out. Jeremiah returned just after sunset. Dusty, bloodied, but grinning. Heard someone shot you. Didn't take. Rosalia smiled weakly. He should have aimed better. He dropped a satchel on her bed. Proof. Financials. Voss has been moving syndicate gold into his own accounts, secretly. He's been staging a coup. They'll hang him if this goes public. Rosalia's eyes lit up. Then we make it public. Tomorrow. At dawn, Clara and Finch rode to the Canyon Bluff telegraph office with duplicates. Jeremiah sent physical copies by rail to El Paso, Denver, and Chicago. They even nailed one to the town hall door in Sagebrush. General Arden Voss, traitor to the syndicate, embezzler, murderer. Documents attached. Truth delivered by the Callaway Cooperative. By noon, word spread. By sunset, syndicate agents began retreating from nearby towns. By midnight, a train carrying reinforcements stopped just short of Raven Gorge and turned back. Rosalia's bullet. Wound burned, but her eyes burned brighter. Voss was alone. He made his stand the next night. Desperate strike. He rode with 12 mercenaries and 2 Gatling wagons. They descended from the northern ridge under moonlight, hoping to slip through while the ranch slept. But Callaway ranch didn't sleep. Jeremiah and Elias sprang the first trap explosives buried beneath the dry creek bed. The wagons burst apart, metal flying like bees. Finch and Clara sniped the outriders before they reached the stables. Rosalia stood in the front yard, her arm bandaged, her revolver steady. Voss rode up, alone, smoke curling from behind him. He dismounted. Threw his saber to the ground. It's done, he growled. They've recalled me. Not just recalled, Rosalia said. Disowned. He stepped forward. I have an offer. I walk away. You keep the ranch. We call it even. No, he froze. Think carefully. Rosalia stepped forward, nose to nose with him. Your kind always forget. We're not doing this to win. We're doing it so the next bastard thinks twice. She turned to Jeremiah. Take him to Canyon Bluff. Let the people judge him. They rode Voss out in shackles. Crowds gathered, cheered, spit. The trial lasted 3 days. The verdict, guilty of embezzlement, murder, and attempted insurrection. Sentence, life. In the deep mines of Silver Rock. When Rosalia returned to the ranch, a quiet peace had settled over it. Not safety, not yet, but peace. The war wasn't over. The coil still lurked. Other generals would rise. Other agents would come. But for the first time in years, the land breathed easy. That night, the stars were clear. Jeremiah sat beside Rosalia on the porch. You ever think we'd make it this far? No, she said. But I always hoped. He took her hand. So what now? Rosalia looked at the lights of the bunkhouse, the fields beyond. The quiet hum of a community, not just surviving, but building something. New, now, she said. We teach the others. Let us know in the comments. Would you have spared Voss or pulled the trigger? Subscribe because next time, the truth behind the coil surfaces. And it's closer than anyone imagined. It began with a whisper. A letter found nailed to the chapel door. No signature, no seal. Just 7 words. The coil is here. And watching, Rosalia read it aloud before the council. Jeremiah, Clara, Finch, Sam. Faces turned to stone. Finch was first to speak. We knew they wouldn't stop. The syndicate may have cut Voss loose, but the coil runs deeper. They don't need permission, just shadows. Jeremiah leaned against the wall. That message wasn't a threat, it was a test. They're gauging our reaction. Then give them one, Rosalia said. They held a fake meeting that night in the open square. Talked loudly about plans for a shipment of ledger duplicates moving south. Half the town saw it. Word would spread. By morning, someone had broken into the print shed. The decoy was gone. Sam found fresh boot prints leading toward the western trail. Jeremiah studied the dirt. 3 men, not locals, 1 heavyset, 2 light-footed. Military stride. Rosalia scanned the horizon. Let them run, we follow. Clara, Jeremiah, and Rosalia tracked them for 2 days through mesa and scrub. On the 3rd dawn, they came upon a camp. 3 men sat hunched around a fire. 1 sharpened a blade. Another cleaned a pistol. The 3rd wrote something into a black-bound book. Jeremiah whispered, "That's it. That's their coil ledger. Names, orders." They waited until nightfall. Rosalia struck first, quick, silent. Clara followed, firing 1 clean shot. Jeremiah rushed. The last one tackled him hard. "Who's your handler?" He growled. The man only smiled. Then his tooth clicked. Jeremiah pulled back just in time. The man's head jerked, and he fell limp. A poison capsule. Coil standard. Rosalia grabbed the ledger. It was written in cipher. "Get it to Finch," she said. "If we can crack this, we name the rest." Back at the ranch, Finch worked for 2 days straight. Charts, strings, mirrors. He barely ate, and then he found the key. It's an overlay cipher, based on train schedules. Took their supply manifest from 6 weeks ago and aligned the stop date. Suddenly, the names emerged. He slid the list to Rosalia. She read them slowly. 9 names. 3 in neighboring towns. 2 within the county court. 1 in a railroad office. 3 in Sagebrush itself. Her stomach turned when she saw the last. Sheriff Tom Barrett. Rosalia rode to Sagebrush under nightfall. Jeremiah came with her, eyes scanning every rooftop. They met the sheriff in his office. Rosalia placed the ledger on his desk. "We cracked it. You're in it." Barrett didn't move. "You sure?" Jeremiah laid down the decoded list. Barrett's eyes flicked over it. Then, with a sigh, he unbuckled his gun belt and placed it on the desk. "I always liked you, Rosalia. Hoped you wouldn't dig this deep." "Why?" she whispered. "Because they made me sheriff. Because they promised to rebuild. I thought I could help more from inside. But it became lies, blackmail, then blood." He looked at Jeremiah. "You'll take me in then?" Rosalia shook her head. "You'll walk to the gallows. In front of everyone." "That's the only way this ends," Barrett nodded. "Then let's ride." His execution shook the territory. For the first time, a coil agent had been named, proven, and sentenced by public court. The other 8 names? 3 fled. 2 were arrested. 1 turned informant. The rest vanished, but fear now shifted to the syndicate. Because the Callaway Cooperative was no longer just surviving. It was exposing them. That night, Rosalia stood on the hilltop, overlooking the ranch. Jeremiah joined her. "You think that's all of them?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, but it's a start. We keep going until the shadows run out of places to hide." He took her hand. They watched the stars rise. "Let us know. Would you have unmasked the sheriff or struck from the shadows?" Subscribe because next, Time, the syndicate calls in its final debt. From someone Rosalia once trusted. The man rode in just after dawn, alone, no saddlebag. No weapon, just a gray overcoat, a limp in his left leg, and a face that Rosalia hadn't seen in years. Elliot Sloan, the banker who once offered to help fund the cooperative, before the syndicate absorbed his entire branch. Before he disappeared, Rosalia stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. "You're either brave or stupid." Sloan raised both hands. "Maybe both. I'm here because someone higher up wants to cash in a favor. From you." Jeremiah appeared at her side. "A favor? From her?" Sloan nodded. "You saved my daughter. 5 years ago, got her out of that fire I never forgot. And now, one of them hasn't either." He reached into his coat slowly and pulled out a sealed envelope. Rosalia opened it. Inside, a letter, written in precise script. "Miss Calloway, you have proven impossible to silence. So I offer one final proposition. My name is Hector Marin. I control 3 syndicate subsidiaries in the Colorado Territory. I want out. I want protection. And I have something you need. The master ledger. Every transaction, every bribe, every name. But I will only deal with you. Come to the Iron Cross Junction." Alone, Sloan swallowed. He's real. I used to see his name on the quarterly summaries. No one above him except board members. Rosalia stared at the letter for a long time. "It's a trap," Jeremiah said. "Or a con." "Probably," she agreed. "But if it's real, it's the endgame." She rode out that afternoon, alone. Iron Cross Junction was a half-abandoned freight depot built against the cliff's edge. One road in. No way out but the tracks or the drop. Rosalia arrived at sundown. The wind howled between the rusted rails. A man stood at the edge, looking down into the gorge. Hector Marin, tall, thin, elegant. His suit looked like it cost more than her entire ranch. "Miss Calloway," he said, "I admire your resolve. Save it. Where's the ledger?" He pointed to a crate behind him. "Inside. Sealed. Why? Why now?" Marin turned, and for the first time, Rosalia saw weariness in a syndicate man's eyes. Because they stopped listening. "They started killing their own. I built this machine. I thought it would regulate chaos. But it became chaos. And now, I want out. And what do you want in return?" "Immunity, anonymity, and passage to the coast." Rosalia nodded. "Done." But before she could move, a shot rang out. Marin jerked and collapsed. Rosalia dove behind the crate. Another bullet slammed into the rail. 3 figures advanced from the shadows. Coil operatives. Cleaners. She fired once. Hit a shoulder. Another flanked. She spun and shot low. The man screamed. The third lunged, knife drawn. Rosalia grabbed Marin's cane and swung hard. The metal cracked across the attacker's skull. Silence. She crawled to Marin. He was bleeding. "Fast." "The crate," he gasped. Inside, she tore it open. A book. Bound in black iron. The master ledger. Names, all of them. Marin whispered, "You'll burn the whole forest. Just promise me." "What?" He looked her in the eyes. "Don't become what I did." He died before she could answer. Rosalia returned at midnight. Clara met her at the gate. "You're hurt." "Not bad." She handed the ledger to Finch. "This ends it, if we make it public. If we endure the storm." Finch opened the first page. Gasps followed. Name after name. Senators, judges, sheriffs, landowners, bankers. And at the top of the last page, Jeremiah. Wolf. Silence hit like thunder. Rosalia turned slowly. Jeremiah's face was stone. "I was recruited. Long ago, before you, before all this, I tried to walk away. Thought they'd erased me. But I guess they never do." Rosalia stared. "You lied to me." "No," he said. "I chose you. I left them. Every move since then has been for this. For you. Clara stepped forward. "What now?" Rosalia's voice trembled. "We don't hide it. We show the truth. All of it." She turned. "The ledger, even if it breaks us. Let us know. Would you have trusted Jeremiah again?" Subscribe, because next time, the West must decide forgiveness or justice. The barn was silent except for the steady drip of rain on the roof. Rosalia sat at the center of the room. The master ledger opened before her, every name burning into her mind. Around her stood the council: Clara, Finch, Elias, and Jeremiah. He hadn't said a word since they returned. Finally, Clara broke the silence. "We can't keep this secret." "Not if we stand for truth." Finch nodded. "He's on that list, Rosalia. Same list as the men who ordered your brother's murder." Jeremiah's voice was low. "And I've spent every day since trying to undo what I helped build." Rosalia looked at him. "Did you ever lie to me? Not omission." "Never, not once." "Did you ever report back after you joined me?" He hesitated. "Once, early. I told them I was going dark. They said they'd find me eventually, but they never came, until now." Rosalia closed the ledger. She turned to the others. "We make it public. Every name, even his." Jeremiah didn't flinch. "But then," she added, "we judge him here, among us." The room buzzed with tension. Clara stepped forward. "You're saying we hold our own trial? We're not vigilantes. But we're not pawns either. This land needs more than justice. It needs a new foundation." They agreed. The next morning, they gathered everyone. From across the valley, families came. Ranchers, miners, traders, teachers. Rosalia stood before them. "The ledger you're about to see will change everything. Names you trust, names you fear, names among us." She held up the black-bound book. "We're publishing it in full. And afterward, we will hold a hearing for Jeremiah Wolf." Gasps, murmurs. She continued. "He was part of them, once, long ago. But he walked away. And for the last 5 years, he's bled beside us." She stepped aside. Jeremiah climbed the platform. "I won't ask forgiveness, but I will speak the truth. I joined the syndicate because I thought they'd restore order. Instead, they taught me how to kill, how to disappear people, how to control through fear. Then I met her. And the moment I saw this place, this dream, I wanted to burn everything I'd been. But I know that doesn't undo the blood. I stand ready to be judged." The trial lasted 3 days. People spoke. Some in his defense, some not. Finch testified. Elias, too. Clara remained silent until the final day. "I lost a brother to the syndicate," she said. "But I've watched Jeremiah fight harder than anyone I know. He's not that man anymore." In the end, they voted. Exile or absolution. The tally was read. Allowed to 126 for absolution, 89 for exile. It was close. But it was enough. Rosalia stood before him. "You remain. But your past walks with you. You will carry it, own it, and teach others what it cost." He nodded, eyes wet. In the following weeks, the ledger burned through the West like a match in dry grass. Senators resigned. Judges were disbarred. Entire towns shifted their flags from syndicate-backed banks to new cooperatives. Callaway Ranch became a symbol, not just of resistance, but of rebirth. The last train bearing the syndicate seal departed the territory. Under armed escort. Months passed. Then a year. A new school opened beside the orchard. A clinic followed. Trade flourished. Rosalia stood under the cottonwood tree, overlooking it all. Jeremiah joined her. He held a carved piece of wood. "What's that?" she asked. He showed her. A nameplate. Callaway Cooperative, founded in truth. She smiled. "You think it'll last?" he asked. She looked at the sky. "If we keep choosing truth over comfort, fire over silence, forgiveness over hate, maybe it will." They nailed the sign to the gate, and for the first time in a decade, The wind that swept the ranch didn't carry fear, it carried hope. Let us know. Would you have voted to forgive or to exile? Subscribe for the next series, where the children of the Callaway Cooperative must defend what their parents built against a new kind of enemy. The morning sun painted the cooperative fields gold as children dashed between the hay bales, laughter bright as larksong. Yet under the cheer, Rosalia sensed a new tremor, one not of gunpowder or greed, but of innocence threatened. A teacher, Ms. Helena March, knocked at the gate. Her eyes, usually warm, now carried a quiet alarm. In her hands, she clutched a handful of letters from families across the territory, complaints of foreign educators, religious pamphlets, and ideologies imported by telegraph, sowing discord among young minds. Rosalia invited her into the council treehouse in the orchard. Clara and Jeremiah joined, brows furrowed. They claim children here are being taught sedition, Ms. March began, voice trembling. They threaten to pull funding, label the school as subversive, and declare the cooperative unfit guardians. Silence spread. Elias broke it. Who they? Helena pointed to a letter from the Pacific Federation of Public Morals, a powerful lobbying group aligned with Eastern interests. They oppose our independent education, see it as breeding rebellion. Rosalia closed her eyes. A new foe, censorship, ideology war. We fought with guns, she said softly. Now we'll fight with ideas. They organized a symposium under the great cottonwood. Scholars, preachers, farmers shared stories of learning, empowering communities. Clara recited essays by local children. Finch charted literacy rates. Jeremiah displayed maps of cooperative study groups sprouting across towns. The crowd swelled. When the Federation's envoy arrived, an austere man in tailored coat, Rosalia greeted him with hospitality and challenged him to live by their own charter. Education builds citizenship, not obedience. He left silent, the orchard echoing with children's voices. Over the next months, the cooperative built a traveling school wagon. Teachers rode circuits, carrying books donated by Eastern libraries won over by letters and articles. Debates blossomed in saloons. Newspapers published essays by local adolescents. The Federation pushed back. Tariffs on imported paper. Pressure on postal routes. But the cooperative answered. Seed libraries to teach botany. Oral storytelling festivals to preserve local history. Woodcut printing presses powered by windmills. By autumn, while other territories debated literacy, Callaway's children read, wrote, and spoke freely. One crisp evening, Rosalia and Jeremiah walked the lantern-lit hall of the new schoolhouse. A portrait of her mother hung over the podium. Jeremiah paused. They called us radicals. Now they call us a model. Rosalia touched the frame. Truth's better teacher than fear. Jeremiah nodded, eyes on the rows of desks now empty after evening. Classes, but always a risk. New ideas can spark new conflicts. She smiled gently. Then we keep teaching. Every generation becomes our legacy. Lightning flashed, illuminating the sign above the door. Callaway Cooperative School Knowledge. Freedom, hope. And in the distance, a train whistle sounded. This one carrying books, ideas, and visitors eager to learn the recipe of a community that chose empowerment over oppression. Let us know. Would you stand for their right to learn? Subscribe for Part 17, When a Plague Sweeps the Valley, and Only Unity Can Save the Children. The rails gleamed silver beneath the midday sun as the Union Continental's newest locomotive pulled into Sagebrush Junction for the first time in 2 years. The engine's whistle sliced through the valley's quiet, the carnival of steam and steel promising progress, or peril. Rosalia stood on the platform of the newly completed station, her cooperative coat cinched tight against the March breeze. Behind her, Clara cataloged the arrival in her journalist's notebook. Jeremiah reviewed the cargo manifests, and Finch inspected the track junctions. The car doors opened, and passengers disembarked. merchants, engineers, and a single stern-faced official carrying a leather briefcase stamped with the company seal. Rosalia approached him. "Welcome back to Sagebrush. What brings the Union Continental to our valley?" The official clamped the briefcase beneath his arm and extended a gloved hand. "Commissioner Alden Hayes, Territorial Liaison. I'm here to finalize the agreement for the cooperative's continued usage of the line and to introduce new regulations enacted by the board." Rosalia's eyes narrowed. She extended her hand. "What kind of regulations?" Hayes's tone was polite but firm. "Rate adjustments on freight tariffs, standardization of telegraph fees, and a requirement that all cooperative shipments adhere to federal codes for cargo inspections." Jeremiah examined the manifest. "These rates nearly double our costs." Hayes nodded. "We need to sustain the line's profitability. The board sees your cooperative as a model, but not a charity." Rosalia's heart sank. The cooperative's margins were thin already. If rates rose, local farmers couldn't afford to ship goods. If inspections slowed, perishable cargo would spoil. She turned to the assembled crowd: families, ranchers, traders eager, faces staring back. She squared her shoulders. "Mr. Hayes, our agreement from 2 years ago bound us to mutual support. We built the station, and the line served our people. Today's demands risk strangling the very communities that made your line possible." Hayes's gaze was steady. "I'm here to enforce the board's policies." Rosalia's voice rose, carrying across the platform. "Then we must renegotiate. We offer partnership, not subjugation. Lower rates for small shippers, codified inspection times, a cooperative board seat." Strangers in Sagebrush watched in silence. As business met negotiation, Hayes paused. He met Rosalia's unwavering gaze. Then he lifted his hat. "You've always been a formidable negotiator, Miss Calloway. The board will consider your terms. But you'll need to provide data, shipping volumes, profit margins, turnaround times." Rosalia nodded. "We'll have a report in 48 hours. Hayes inclined his head. "I'll await it in Carson City." He turned and strode off the platform, briefcase tapping his thigh. Clara looked up from her notebook. "Did we win?" Rosalia exhaled. "We'll see." Back at the cooperative offices, the team mobilized. Clara headed data collection: volume of wool, grain, livestock shipped. Finch plotted delivery times and breakdowns at other rural stations. Jeremiah consulted engineering logs on rail maintenance costs. Rosalia drafted the proposal: tiered tariffs favoring small producers, guaranteed inspection windows, a rotating board seat shared among all cooperatives along the line. 48 hours later, they hand-carried the proposal to Carson City. Rosalia, Clara, and Finch rode the same locomotive back, tense beneath the hum of wheels. At the board meeting, Hayes presented their report. Directors in polished suits scrutinized spreadsheets and profit forecasts. One by one, they questioned the viability doubts about lost revenue and complexity of inspections. Rosalia stood and addressed the panel. "Gentlemen, the cooperative shipments grew tenfold in the last year, sustaining the line through the spring plague when other markets fell. Lowering tariffs on small shippers will expand volume even further, offsetting the rate reduction. Predictable inspections reduce delays, increasing trust in rail commerce. And local governance ensures swift conflict resolution, reducing legal costs for the company." She laid out graphs and testimonials, voice clear, unwavering. After hours of debate, the board adjourned for recess. Outside the marble hall, Clara whispered, "Do you think they'll accept?" Rosalia allowed a small smile. They'd be fools not to. But as they reboarded the train, Finch unearthed confidential memos. Some board members sought to bypass the cooperative entirely. Planning a bypass line south, they returned to Sagebrush with fresh evidence, letters exposing the bypass scheme and risk to existing towns. Rosalia convened a public hearing at the town hall. Speeches rang out. Farmers lamented higher costs. Merchants warned of closed markets. Families spoke of grandchildren's schooling and medicine deliveries. Clara reported on national news outlets picking up the story. Jeremiah presented alternative route surveys showing the bypass was infeasible and environmentally destructive. Facing the assembled cooperative and citizens, Rosalia addressed the cooperative microphone. Gentlemen of Union Continental, this valley is not expendable. These communities built your line. And these stories matter as much as any spreadsheet. If you bypass us, you jeopardize every link in the network upstream. The following morning, Hayes returned, ushered into Rosalia's office with surprising haste. He placed a stamped envelope on her desk. The board has approved your proposal. Reduced tariffs, scheduled inspections, and your cooperative board seat. The bypass is canceled. Relief flooded Rosalia's chest. She extended her hand. Thank you. Hayes simply nodded. This partnership works when both sides win. Weeks later, the cooperative sent its first official advisory to neighboring territories, a model for community rail governance, published in trade journals from Denver to San Francisco. Back at Sagebrush Station, Clara penned the final line in her journal. Iron rails forged progressive coalitions. Truth, if wielded wisely, can bind steel lines to the betterment of all. Rosalia closed the ledger on her desk and stepped outside. The locomotive waited, steam rising, ready to depart. She watched as farmers loaded crates of wool, grain, and fresh produce. Proof that progress need not steamroll the small. The valley's fields stretched green as promise, and the rails stretched silver as possibility. Let us know. Would you fight to shape progress on your own terms? Subscribe for Part 19 when an old enemy returns. Not on horseback, but through a judge's gavel. Under the vaulted dome of the Carson City Courthouse, sunlight fractured through stained glass windows, casting fractured prisms across polished mahogany. The atmosphere buzzed with solemnity and latent tension, a testament to the stakes at hand. Rosalia sat at the plaintiff's table, ledger sprawled before her. Jeremiah stood behind her shoulder, blazer unbuttoned, eyes scanning the rows of spectators, cooperative members, town officials, Union Continental representatives, and an undercurrent of strangers in dark suits. At the defense table, the syndicate's new legal team prepared their documents. Alan Graves, a barbed-sharp attorney with steel-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat and addressed the judge. Your Honor, my clients contend that the Callaway Cooperatives continued demands on the Union Continental Railway breach the original charter and hinder interstate commerce. We seek an injunction and damages for lost revenue. Judge Marlene Prescott, silver hair tied in a severe bun, peered over her spectacles. This court will hear opening statements. Miss Callaway. Rosalia stood, calm as dawn. Your Honor, this cooperative built the Silver Star Station, extended the rails, and preserved commerce through plague and conflict. The Master Ledger Public Record shows our efforts created value, expanded markets, and stabilized freight flow. We are not a hindrance, but the foundation of this line's prosperity. Graves smirked. A stirring speech, Ms. Callaway, but sentiment does not override federal statutes. Regulation must be uniform across all states. Your preferential tariffs create an unfair competitive advantage. Rosalia met his gaze. Advantage for small producers, yes. But that enhances volume. Without us, your line lost half its traffic in 2025 alone. Judge Prescott nodded. Proceed with evidence. Over 2 days, witnesses testified. Clara detailed the cooperative's spring wheat shipments, citing volume increases. Finch presented track maintenance logs showing cooperative-funded repairs reduced derailments by 80%. A chain of farmers described how lower tariffs kept their families afloat. Even the territorial governor submitted an affidavit praising the cooperative model. Graves leapt to cross-examine. but each point only underscored their argument. On the second afternoon, he called an unlikely witness, Commissioner Hayes. Rosalia's heart clenched. Hayes approached the stand, polished and poised. "Commissioner Hayes," Graves began, "did you previously support the cooperative's tariff adjustments?" Hayes nodded coolly. "I did. I believed and the board agreed that it was prudent to stabilize critical routes." Graves's eyes sharpened. "Yet your board recently instructed you to submit this suit." Hayes hesitated. "I cannot confirm internal deliberations." Judge Prescott frowned. Rosalia rose, stepping between tables. "Your Honor, I request to call additional testimony. These proceedings, financed by interests seeking to bypass regional commerce, are not in the public interest." Graves sneered. "Irrelevant, Your Honor," but Prescott silenced him. "Miss Calloway may approach." Rosalia presented an envelope, copies of internal Union Continental emails obtained via whistleblower, showing intent to undermine the cooperative to push a new bypass through federal lands. Gasps rippled. Graves sputtered. Prescott took the documents, read a paragraph aloud. Her expression darkened. "This court finds evidence of bad faith. Proceedings suspended pending federal review. Case dismissed." A ripple of relief swept the gallery. Rosalia exhaled. Jeremiah touched her arm. Later, outside the courthouse, Rosalia addressed a waiting press. "This verdict upholds local governance and public-private partnership, ensuring that progress serves communities, not corporate monopolies." Journalists scribbled. In the crowd, a figure slipped away. A syndicate liaison. Head bowed. Back in Sagebrush, the valley celebrated with a procession. Banners waving, bands playing, the cooperative's flag streaming. Children scattered rose petals, and the Silver Star Station's bells tolled. Rosalia stood on the platform, Jeremiah beside her. She waved to the townsfolk. "Today we won more than a case. We won recognition that truth and fairness can guide the rails." The locomotive departed slowly, engines chugging, carrying hope and commerce together. That night, Rosalia closed the master ledger. Names continued to fade. But the legacy etched not in iron, but in community, endured. Under the whisper of cottonwood leaves, she and Jeremiah walked into the cool night. "Judge Prescott said it best," Jeremiah murmured. "Bad faith is antithetical to justice," Rosalia smiled. "And we'll keep faith alive, as long as these rails stretch across our land." A train whistle echoed in the distance, a promise of tomorrow. Let us know. Would you trust the gavel over the gun? Subscribe for Part 20, the final chapter, where the next generation stakes their claim in the land their parents fought to save. The dawn air carried the scent of fresh timber and wild sage as Rosalia stood atop the new pedestrian bridge spanning the cooperative fields. Below, families and children gathered for Founders' Day celebrations, the final chapter of a saga that began with blood and dust and now reached toward promise. Jeremiah joined her, hand in hand. The bridge's planks were etched with names of every cooperative member, ancestors and newcomers alike, each a link in the chain of community. "You did it," he said softly. Rosalia watched as the children ran across, their laughter echoing beneath. "The rails, we did it, together." Behind them, a delegation of schoolchildren approached, led by Clara, now teaching literature under the gallant cottonwoods. One little girl, Josephine, carried a wooden box inside. Letters from the next generation. Addressed to the cooperative's future stewards, Josephine handed Rosalia a letter. Rosalia opened it, eyes bright. "Dear Cooperative, 2035. Thank you for teaching us that right can move steel and honesty can build bridges. We promise to keep these rails honest and extend them toward new horizons. Love, the class of 2035. Rosalia read aloud, voice steady. When she finished, she placed the letter on the box, joining hundreds of others, each a beacon of hope. The crowd hushed before breaking into applause. Later, The cooperative hall buzzed with a final meeting. Rosalia and Jeremiah presided over the passing of leadership. Clara, Finch, and representatives of the town would guide the future. Rosalia placed her notes on the desk. I've served 15 years as steward. Now it's time for the next generation. Clara rose, voice filled with emotion. We stand on the foundations you built: truth, unity, courage. We vow to honor that every day. Finch stepped forward. And will adapt. Technology, climate, commerce, they'll shift. But the cooperative principle endures. That evening, as lanterns glowed beneath the cottonwoods, the first night train rolled in carrying engineers to extend the line westward, connecting new communities to the cooperative vision. People boarded the cars to depart or to ride the rails as volunteers, teachers, doctors, artisans spreading knowledge and hope. Rosalia and Jeremiah stood on the platform, hands clasped. Ready for your journey? He asked. Always, she replied. The whistle blew, a salute to what had been sacrificed and achieved. As the train pulled away, Rosalia watched the sunlight catch the rails, turning steel into ribbons of promise. She whispered to the wind, carry our story forward. May our choices, hope over fear, truth over silence, guide every soul who walks these tracks. And in the distance, beneath endless sky, the legacy of the rails stretched unwoven through every heart, every home, every horizon. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The dawn air carried the scent of fresh timber and wild sage as Rosalia stood atop the new pedestrian bridge spanning the cooperative fields. Below, families and children gathered for Founders' Day celebrations, the final chapter of a saga that began with blood and dust and now reached toward promise. Jeremiah joined her, hand in hand. The bridge's planks were etched with names of every cooperative member, ancestors and newcomers alike, each a link in the chain of community. You did it, he said softly. Rosalia watched as the children ran across, their laughter echoing beneath the rails. We did it, together. Behind them, a delegation of schoolchildren approached, led by Clara, now teaching literature under the gallant cottonwoods. One little girl, Josephine, carried a wooden box inside. Letters from the next generation. Addressed to the cooperative's future stewards, Josephine handed Rosalia a letter. Rosalia opened it, eyes bright. Dear Cooperative, 2035. Thank you for teaching us that right can move steel and honesty can build bridges. We promise to keep these rails honest and extend them toward new horizons. Love, the class of 2035. Rosalia read aloud, voice steady. When she finished, she placed the letter on the box, joining hundreds of others, each a beacon of hope. The crowd hushed before breaking into applause. Later, the cooperative hall buzzed with a final meeting. Rosalia and Jeremiah presided over the passing of leadership. Clara, Finch, and representatives of the town would guide the future. Rosalia placed her notes on the desk. I've served 15 years as steward. Now it's time for the next generation. Clara rose, voice filled with emotion. We stand on the foundations you built: truth, unity, courage. We vow to honor that every day. Finch stepped forward. And will adapt. Technology, climate, commerce, they'll shift. But the cooperative principle endures. That evening, as lanterns glowed beneath the cottonwoods, the first night train rolled in carrying engineers to extend the line westward, connecting new communities to the cooperative vision. People boarded the cars to depart or to ride the rails as volunteers, teachers, doctors, artisans spreading knowledge and hope. Rosalia and Jeremiah stood on the platform, hands clasped. Ready for your journey? He asked. Always, she replied. The whistle blew, a salute to what had been sacrificed and achieved. As the train pulled away, Rosalia watched the sunlight catch the rails, turning steel into ribbons of promise. She whispered to the wind, carry our story forward. May our choices, hope over fear, truth over silence, guide every soul who walks these tracks. And in the distance, beneath endless sky, the legacy of the rails stretched unwoven through every heart, every home, every horizon. 2 more. Great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.